All right, good morning, Sis Ndombi, with Ben. Can we just check and make sure everybody gets in? Um, and Bummer.
Looking very smart, Chair.
Morning, Bennett. How are you? I'm feeling a bit hot, actually. I'm about to take this coat off just now. Good morning, everyone. My apologies about yesterday. I did miss you, and thank you, Babu Somio, for holding the fort. And thanks a lot, colleagues.
Good morning, Chairperson.
Good morning, DM. Colleagues, Ms. Dombi is going to send correspondence to you shortly. Which I finalized this morning that you will receive just now. May explain a few things. Maybe if we can deal with our own housekeeping matters at the end of the meeting, and then I can explain some of the changes to scheduling which have arisen. So I'll humbly request that we deal with that at the end of our meeting this morning. Let me take this opportunity, colleagues, to welcome you. We are receiving a briefing this morning from the Department of Employment and Labor, insofar as the compensation fund is concerned. There's an outstanding presentation that they made on the 24th. We were supposed to make on the 24th of November last year, but we overran with time. So I think we'll start there. And the second point is that, of course, DM, we have yet found ourselves with a disclaimed audit outcome with the compensation fund, a situation which is wholly untenable, unacceptable, and well indicative of a host of issues which we probably will have to deal with. But the fact that yet again we have got what I can only now call a permanent feature of disclaimed audit outcomes at the compensation fund is something which, as far as we are concerned, requires urgent and immediate action, including but not limited to the questions I posed the last time when we were meeting on this matter, which I think we will go to again. Colleagues, as indicated, I did receive the apology of the minister, who is currently in Botswana. So the deputy minister is here, and the DG and the commissioner of the compensation fund. So what we'll do, we'll take the presentation, and then Mam Tolash will be first off the bat after that to field questions. And then I would also like to welcome the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labor, who are joining us this morning. The changes which were discussed and have resulted in us meeting this morning were in agreement with the Portfolio Committee because of the clashes of scheduling amongst others. And the entities and the department will be now appearing there tomorrow. So Mahmoud Dunjwa and your team of the Portfolio Committee, honorable colleagues, we would like to welcome you as well this morning to this
recording
meeting.
In progress.
So, and then Sister Ben, please put the apologies as per normal in the apologies register, and then the minutes, all the minutes of the past few meetings, we'll sort those out tonight. But colleagues, so on that note, I would like to then hand over, if there's any other matter. Colleagues, are you all fine? We'll hand over to the Deputy Minister, Memloy, and she can make preliminary remarks, introductory remarks, and then we will then go straight into the presentation, which was supposed to have been done on the 24th of November. And then Mam Tolashe, you'll be first off the bat after that. So on that note, colleagues, good morning and welcome to our meeting this morning. Deputy Minister, over to you.
Thank you so much, honorable members, honorable chairperson. I'm using a phone because we are having a challenge of network. Trying to log on, we are unable to do so. My apologies. So the network might actually from time we might be affected by the network. But good morning, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable members of SCOPA and our Honorable members of the Portfolio Committee of Employment and Labor who have joined us today. Good morning. Our DG of Employment Labor, DG Lamati, the Commissioner of CF, Commissioner Vuyo Mafata, and all senior officials who are present today. Good morning. Allow me once again, Honorable Chairperson, as you have already alluded to the absence of the Minister owing to the attendance of ARLAC governing body and a meeting of Ministers of Employment and Labor in SADC in Botswana. Honorable Chairperson, as you have already alluded to, as the Department of Employment and Labor, we are here because you have invited one of our entities, once again, the Compensation Fund. You have invited Compensation Fund to the hearing following, once again, a poor audit outcome of the same entity. A disclaimer which follows a series of other disclaimers. Honorable Chairperson and honorable members of SCOPA, when we were here before you last year in May, our minister in his overview remarks indicated that he would initiate a forensic investigation into the operations of the Compensation Fund, and at the end of that meeting, SCOPA endorsed the idea of the forensic investigation, and it became one of the decisions of that meeting, among others. And looking into Compensation Fund, we looked at what more could be done to get this entity out of the bed books. And we realized that scratching the surface and papering over the cracks were not helping in anything. Hence, we ended up entertaining the idea of a forensic investigation. And because we could see, we could also see in the horizon that other disclaimers were looming. This we could see because challenges of the Compensation Fund appears to be deep-seated and systemic. And yes, we are here again because Compensation Fund in 2020-2021 financial year has received yet another disclaimer. As much as we love you all, honorable members of SCOPA, I must say that we do wish that we do not see each other in meetings like this. And that is why we worked around the clock in ensuring that decisions that we took in our previous interactions were actioned, while they took longer than anticipated. Another decision that came out of our previous interaction, honorable members, is that one of the implementation of the audit action plan. Honorable Chairperson, I must hasten to indicate that these decisions were also taken by the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labor, who are also keeping us at our toes in terms of demanding progress. Honorable members, our DG, Mr. Lamati, is here. The Commissioner of Compensation Fund is also here. They are the ones who will deal with the granular details in as far as information that you require. And suffice to say that from myself and the Minister, honorable members, our attitude is that the digging deeper into Compensation Fund affairs and those of any other entity of the Department of Employment and Labor that may have more or less similar challenges is our focus, and to this end, we believe that forensic investigation may just provide valuable information that may come handy into eliminating, if not all, perhaps many matters that are unwanted, particularly in the Compensation Fund. Our Director General was directed to action the following, and he will provide an update on those actions with the Commissioner. Among others, the appointment of forensic investigators, development of an action plan to address the audit disclaimers at the Compensation Fund, appointment of highly qualified financial and audit professionals to assist the CF finance management in dealing with the historical and current finance and performance reporting. On the basis of our regular monitoring meetings with the DG and the compensation fund. It is my understanding, honorable members, that the following have been acted upon. One, the appointment of forensic investigator to carry out investigations into various areas of work in the compensation fund. The procurement processes were completed in November 2021. And I'm sure you would understand the fact that the process of procurement takes longer than anticipated. Number two, that the Director General led the process of the development of an action plan in June 2021, which resulted in the adoption of the Clean Audit Action Plan. The Clean Audit Action Plan, the Commissioner will elaborate on that. Among the activities in the action plan is the implementation of preventative controls in the management of unlisted investments, which are made through the Public Investment Corporation, a subject which is a recurring audit finding. And I'm sure at some point, honorable members, you would have to discuss this matter separately. This is what we also thought that the portfolio committee will deal with at some point, that we need to call the Deputy Minister of Finance, who is now the chairman of the PIC itself, where we are investing. And if you remember that most of the time our entities request more often than not an extension of submission of the annual financial statements, because the financial year end of the PIC is not necessarily in sync with the financial year of government. So I think at some point this can be a discussion for another meeting and another day, honorable members. But among others, as the last point, the appointment of skills resources to close the skills gap identified in the financial management and audit unit of the fund. And these resources have started working at compensation fund and from end of January 2022. Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, we are now on your hands, and as I have already indicated, that both the DG and the Commissioner are here, and we'll take it from there. And thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson, for your audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, DM. On that very happy note of love, it's consistent with Valentine's this week. Right? Can we? And I think the pertinent issues that you raise, DM, which of course do require our attention, and I think we got the added advantage of being with the portfolio committee this morning. All right, can we hand over to the compensation fund to therefore take us through their presentation so that we can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honorable members. Good morning to DM and the DG, as well as the colleagues that are present in the session today. Can I just check the Secretariat? Are you going to fly to the presentation, or can I do that from my side?
So you said the hosting rights have already been extended to Mr. Mafata.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, thank you, Chair. I'll be taking the committee through the presentation in terms of the progress that we've made following the process that was led by the DG in June, after we appeared before the committee to develop an action plan that was aimed at making sure that we deal with all the root causes of the issues that have been the cause for a disclaimer in the compensation fund for a long time. So this is a progress report as at end of December in terms of the activities that we had carried out. So this is just the layout of the presentation. I'll just go to the summary. I've indicated that this also then addresses all the work that we have worked through over the last 6 months of the implementation of this current action plan. The legends in the action plan will see there's 3 color codings, green, which would then show any activity that has been completed, and we shade a bit lighter for those that have been completed prior to the due dates, as well as the activities that are not yet complete. And that's the activities that will be highlighted in red. And these activities then were due by the reporting date of the 31st of December, but had not been finalized and completed at that point. So we then flag those as red. We also then reflect so that we don't miss any of the activities that are due for implementation in the immediate future or in the next quarter or so. So we reflect those then as blue so that we keep track of those activities that are due in the next couple of weeks while we're pursuing those that we have not completed at the reporting date. This slide just shows the summary of the action plan. We had 169 activities across the 11 areas that we've identified that were forming part of the audit report. And out of these 169 activities, by end of December, we had completed about 138. I'll talk to the details in later slides. And about 31 had not been completed as yet by end of December. And there were 12 that are due in the periods between January to March 2022, which we also then are tracking to make sure that those don't fall or lag behind. So this makes it about 82% of all the activities that we had then planned by end of December. These were then implemented and had been completed. If we start with the first area is around our revenue and receivables from non-exchange transactions. This is the first area that has been disclaimed by the Auditor General. We had identified about 48 actions here. And out of these 48 actions, we were able to implement about 42 of them. Or 42 of them rather were due by 31st of December 2021. And as at that date, the indication is that 33 of them had been completed, and about 9 of them were not yet complete. So 42 of these activities were due for December, and only about 7 of them were due at some time after the end of December. So 79% of the activities had been completed here. So what are those activities that we had completed? So part of the activities that we identified here was around making sure that the completeness and accuracy of our revenue through the return of earnings that we receive from employers, be it manual as well as electronic, that we make sure that we account for all of these. So we put in place an SOP that was aimed at making sure that any ROE that is received at head office, at the CF head office, as well as in the provinces, we're able to adequately account for it so that at the end of the filing season, we don't have any ROEs that may remain unassessed, thus leading to instances of incomplete or inaccurate revenue. We also looked at making sure that there is adequate capacity within our revenue management unit. And part of the activities was related to making sure that we then fill all those posts so that we can eradicate some of the backlogs that existed with regards to employers that have been flagged for audit. These also contributed to some of the issues highlighted by the AG as leading to doubts over the completeness of our revenue. We have also completed some of the activities where we were automating to deal with issues of segregation, implementing system controls as well. So we did a lot of automation of all the ROE processes in the SAP ECC system that we use for reporting our revenue, and also strengthening our relationship with the inspection and enforcement services. One of the issues that had been flagged by the AG was the fact that the enforcement of non-complying employers is quite weak. We have then strengthened that through the inspection and enforcement services. There is a specialized payroll audit unit that has been created in the inspection and enforcement services that focuses solely on enforcing compliance to COIDA. And also we have agreed some deliverables with IES, which are being tracked both at the department level as well as within the compensation fund. We've also looked at working with other organs of state, the CIPC and the UIF, to verify the information that we receive from employers, to make sure that whatever we receive from employers is complete and accurate. The issues around classification of employers, as well as the accounting process around estimation of revenue where employers have not complied. There were doubts also that had been highlighted by the AG over the process of accounting for revenue for estimates or provisions for outstanding, for claims that, for assessments that have not been submitted. There were some activities that we do that had not been finalized. One was holistically deal with the return of earnings from point of entry to the point that it reflects on the general ledger. This then includes also dealing with those items that are provisions for assessments that are not raised. We also wanted to strengthen the process around the issue
Colleagues, is it me or have we lost the commissioner?
You're not the only one, Chair. We've lost
Oh.
him as well.
Yeah, we have lost him. Good morning.
Why am I Mamtulasha? Yeah, okay, there he's back.
I am back, Chair.
All right,
Chair,
Joe, you
I'm
can.
not sure where I got cut, Chair. But I was just highlighting the issues in terms of the areas where we have not completed, the issues around completing the enhancement of the business processes on the return of earnings, and also redesigning some of the accounting processes around the whole revenue split between ROEs that are submitted in current years or ROEs that are submitted in current year in respect of previous financial years. Those are some of the things, the cutoff issues that also led to some of the disclaimers with regards to revenue. So this is a process that we're currently busy with, and that's a process that we'll complete before the end of the financial year, because it will also have an impact on the financial statements that we're preparing for the financial year 2021-2022. If I go to the next slide, the next area of focus that the action plan is focused on is around benefits, another area that has been disclaimed. There were about 74 actions that we had developed. And out of these 74 actions, 66 of these were due by 31st of December, and 8 of them were due after the 31st of December. Of the 66 that were due in December, about 56 of them were completed, and 10 had not yet been completed. I'll then just speak to the details on the next slide. So some of the activities that we were implementing in this area related to preventative controls on the Completeness system, which is the system that we use to process and pay claims, as well as implementing some supervisory controls that would help us to make sure that where there is SOPs that have been put in place, those SOPs are being adhered to. So some of the things that we've been able to do, it's also around subrogation with regards to some of the issues that were raised was that where there has been instances of either overpayments as a result of either processing error, there wasn't any process to make sure that this is recovered as quick as possible. So we have implemented a subrogation process on Completeness system, which automatically raises any debts where there has been instances of overpayments, and then we recover this from payment of subsequent invoices where the medical service provider still has payments due, or a claimant still has payments due. And also we've looked at issues of dealing with the preventative controls around some of the invoices that we received from medical providers who had been paid advance payments that were source of fruitless and wasteful expenditure that was reported in prior years. We had entered into a settlement agreement with 2 service providers, and we implemented some preventative controls in the system to make sure that any invoices submitted by these healthcare providers is checked against those invoices that we've offset on the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and we can then make sure that we only pay for invoices that are due to be paid. Some of the interventions, also the account verification system. In October 2021, we introduced the bank account verification system, which helps us to deal with, to put preventative controls around interception of payments, as well as making payments to, making sure that payments that are made to correct beneficiaries. This system has been in place since October. We did publish a notice in the Government Gazette. Currently, we deal with all exceptions are managed once the exceptions have been flagged by the system. The intention was to make sure that we don't pay into any account that doesn't belong to a claimant, be it's a injured worker or a medical service provider or an employer, as is the current practice with some of the third parties who submit claims on behalf of doctors and then get paid. The invoices are paid back to the third parties as opposed to the doctors. So we had intentions of enforcing this particular process, but we allowed for a process of comments from the stakeholders before we can then enforce or finalize the enforcement of such rules. We have also embarked on a number of enhancement processes on CompEasy with regards to claims. These are some of the things related to control limitations on claims where there is no PD or TTD to make sure that such a claim is closed, to prevent any fraudsters from reopening a claim and trying to process the claim as if a permanent disability or a temporary disability had been accepted. We cleaned up our Active Directory to make sure that only those who are active employees of the Department of Employment and Labor have access to the systems of the compensation fund, and also some of the cleanup activities of medical service providers to make sure that only active medical service providers remain on the system. Any medical service provider who's not active and also is not in good standing with the BHF in terms of paying and submitting the required documentation to be on the practice code numbering system, those are then deactivated on the compensation fund system. And we've also strengthened, also improved some of our reporting with regards to capitalized pension values, one of the issues that had been raised by the AG as potentially incomplete. There are some of the things that we were still busy with. One of the activities was onboarding a new banking service provider. Account verification system is just one of many preventative controls we can use on the banking side to make sure that when we do pay, we pay the right person. There are other tools available. So the action that we had identified here was to, while we were in the process of going on tender for appointment of a new banking partner, we needed to make sure that we include these in the services that we require from a banking provider. So a tender has been advertised now, and we just waiting for the tender to close so that we can then finalize and make sure that we do the appointments. We anticipate that the appointment will be made by end of March this financial year, so that we can then have a new banking provider at the beginning of the new financial year. We also did some audits onto the end-to-end payment processes to check on CompEasy if there is any control gaps that we can close. And so far the controls that we've implemented in CompEasy have found to be adequate. We are doing some enrichments to the pensions data to make sure that we improve the quality and the accuracy of the provisions for claims that we make on our balance sheet at the end of each financial year, and also to improve compliance issues related to claims, both from the PFMA as well as from a COIN point of view. We have developed, and this also is going to help to make sure that everybody knows what their requirements are in terms of compliance to the COIDA. If I move to the next slide, and just shows some of the issues that we have completed, the reconciliations between pensions and payments of pensions. We have implemented some of the data analysis tools with regards to some of the claims and verification also of some of the claims, including the COVID-19 claims on a monthly basis, to make sure that we pay claims. There is also some of the, so one of the issues that had been raised by the AG was also that we don't have processes in place to check where pensioners or dependents of pensioners who are over the age of 18 years, who may still qualify for pensions, or those who may not qualify for pensions any longer. There's no automated process to check this proactively. We always reacted to some of these issues. We have implemented and processes in place to make sure that we do have identify any pensioners over the age of 18 years and to check whether any supporting documentation has been submitted to support continuing payments of these dependents' pensions to the beneficiaries. So these are some of the activities that we then implemented with regards to benefits. If we look at the provision for outstanding claims, there were about 4 actions that we had identified to implement. Of these 4 actions, 1 of them was due to be implemented by end of December, and the 3 other activities were then to be implemented post the 31st of December. And the main activity that we had identified to finish was the appointment through the claims that have been migrated into CompEasy, so that we can then improve the accuracy of and the quality of the provision that we carry on our balance sheet with regard to outstanding claims. There has been issues that have always been raised by the AG around the data reserving that the actuaries are using to deal with the inadequacies that we had in our previous Umehluko system and the data that came out of that system. Now that we've migrated claims to CompEasy, we then wanted to do a whole new review of the current provision as it sits on the balance sheet, to then update that balance if there is a need for it to be updated, so that in future, actuaries don't have to rely on data reserve for inadequacies in the data that we have in our system. So these are subsequent processes that are taking place now in this particular quarter to make sure that when the actuaries do provisions for outstanding claims, we use the data that is sitting on the CompEasy system. The 4th item was on the payables from non-exchange transactions. There were about 4 actions that we had identified. And out of these, 4 of them were due before, all 4 of them were due before 31st of December. And there weren't any actions that were due beyond that, because these were easy, quick wins that we could do with regards to payables. This is claims on the accounting side. So 3 of them were completed, and only 1 activity had not been finalized by the end of December. These accounting processes, 1 was the issues around reconciliations, to make sure that the listings that we do provide to the AG by the end of the financial year would talk to the amounts that we are reflecting on the income statement, as well as the balance sheet of the compensation fund. So these reconciliations of all control accounts. So this process has been put in place in the CFO's office to make sure that for all control accounts, there is adequate reconciliations supported by listings and relevant listings for these claims. And also the compiling the detailed listing of all is a system, as well as the financial statements when we do prepare them at the end of the financial year. We also did a review of all prior misstatements and issues that had been raised by the AG over the last 10 years. And that analysis work was to identify which of the activities would require some accounting work on them, which are some of the intervention, but may require an administrative intervention. So that analysis work has been completed, and there is
the network of the commissioner is not helping us.
I'm back, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Apologies, Chair. Since our system, we haven't recovered from the CETA downtime that happened on Monday, so we're still having intermittent connection issues this side. System is frozen. Chair, I'll just continue. It seems the network is playing with us here. Can I just continue?
Yes, please. I think.
Okay, thanks.
Help
Thanks,
us
Chair.
now.
All right. So the issues around prior period issues. So there is a team that is working with the fund to then address these issues once we've done the analysis. The only activity that we had not completed at the time was the appointment of a data analyst to work through the old claim system. We still have prior period issues relating to benefits that were paid out of the old SAP ECC system, and we needed to do some work to reconcile those back to the financial statements that we had prepared in the past to clear this particular prior period issue. So that's the activity that we were still busy dealing with. See, I'm back, Chair. So the next item relates to the consolidation of investments in associates. So this is one area where the DM spoke about it earlier around the relationship with the PIC and our inability to submit financial statements on time as a result of the dependencies that we have on some of the financial information that comes from the investee companies through the PIC. So we, in terms of the accounting standards, we then required to recognize some of these unlisted investments as associates in our financial statements. And as a result, there is some information that we need to get from these companies to then incorporate into the financial statements of the fund. Over the last 3 years, this has been a major struggle to get this information on time. This is largely due to the fact that most of these companies, their financial year does not align to the financial year of the compensation fund. In some cases where the financial year has ended, the audit process from the Companies Act point of view versus the audit process that we are subjected to, the time frame of the audits always differs. They take almost 6 months to finalize their audits and can only provide us with audited financial statements at some point while we've already completed our financial statements and we've already completed the audit. So we needed to come up with some of the measures to address these issues. Some of the issues that had been flagged by the AG had been also around the quality of the valuations that performed on these investments, as well as the fact that the performance of these investments often has to be impaired, such that the fund then lose some money in the process. So one of the activity that we had finalized here was the revision of the mandate with the PIC to stop investing in these SRI investments until such time that all the reporting and administrative issues with the PIC have been finalized and we can be able to have a process in place that would allow us to get information from these companies on a monthly basis, subject them to our own audit review in the absence of the audited financial statements, and then you use this audit review to place reliance on the information that has been given so that we can then finalize our financial statements on time and submit. So part of the activities that we then wanted to do was to then appoint a service provider through the PIC to then do this high-level review of the management accounts that we receive from these companies or these investee companies on a quarterly basis, and then we can then use this to submit our financial statements. At the end of December, the appointment process had not been finalized, though the PIC had already provided us with all the information that was needed to finalize this. So we are finalizing the appointments, and these companies will then do a high-level review in preparation for the financial statements for 2021, 2022 of all the management accounts of these investee companies, so that we can then use those as opposed to us waiting for the audited financial statements come 31st of March, 2022. And we also wanted them to use the same companies to confirm the valuations that would come from the PIC in May. One of the issues that the Auditor General had highlighted in their briefing to the committee and to the Minister was that some of these valuations that we get from the PIC are not performed in line with, based on financial statements that have been prepared in line with the generally recognized accounting practices, which are used in the public sector, but rather are based on the accounting standards that are used in the private sector. So one of the activities that we wanted to do was to take those valuations and the financial statements that were used in the valuations and convert them to GRAP, and then do the valuations on these to compare the valuations between what the PIC provides and what we get. That would either result in either amending the valuations as they appear on our financials, or confirming that the valuations that have been performed using the other accounting standards does not differ much with, doesn't differ with those that are prepared in line with the generally recognized accounting practices. In the next slide is the investment in financial assets and associates. This still continues the same issues related to the PIC. This is around the accounting transactions within the our investments. This now doesn't only talk to unlisted investments, but it talks to both listed and unlisted investments. The 7 of these actions, all 7 were due before the 31st of December. This also was one of those quick wins that we knew that we could complete and finalize this before the end of the financial year. So 5 of these were completed, and only 2 of these activities had not been finalized at the end of December. In addition to revising the investment mandate to pause or stop investments in social responsible investments, we also needed to do some internal work. One was to look at the structure of the investment unit within the compensation fund, to look at whether we adequately capacitated to be able to carry on this increased monitoring role that we want to have over the PIC. And this assessment was done. And based on that assessment, we then are, in addition to so the minister has requested that there must be an architecture review of the whole of the compensation fund, its business model and the way that it operates. The long-term solution would then come from that architecture review in terms of providing capacity on the investment side. Then in the interim, we then source that capacity through the appointment of an investment advisory firm that would then add capacity to the investment unit in the fund. We also to do some monitoring over the performance of the investee companies. We then requested the PIC to provide us with all financial covenants that they've entered into with the SRI investee companies, where they have provided not only equity but also debt funding in the transaction. We have received this, and then we're monitoring this on a regular basis when PIC reports on a quarterly basis. This helps us to be able to foresee if there is any indicators of
We are left on our own, Chair.
I thought he was coming in. I thought he was returning. Yeah, this is not conducive, eh?
Not productive too, Chair.
Yes. It's certainly not a conducive environment for productivity.
I'm back, Chair.
Okay, let's try one more time, but this is certainly not helpful.
I'm almost done, Chair. So I was dealing with the investments in associates. So some of the work that we then busy doing here, Chair, is to look at those covenants and monitor them on a monthly basis. And then also we've implemented a monthly management meeting with the PIC to then deal with issues of performance, and so that we don't wait for a quarterly reporting process when they report to management and to the investment committee. Part of the activities that we had not finalized was also to amend the SLA with the PIC. Our intention here was to, the SLAs that we've had with the PIC up now had largely not had any penalties on them, especially in instances where PIC is not able to perform according to the mandates that we've set, or not able to comply with our reporting requirements. So we have amended the SLA, and part of the things that we've included is those penalties for non-performance or non-compliance. And the SLA was finalized last year in November. It is sitting that will sign this amended SLA before the end of the current financial year. If I go to the next slide, Chair, the next slide is just on prior period issues. The prior period issues, here also the two activities that we had identified, there were three. Two of them were due in December, and the other was due beyond the end of December. I've already spoken to the issue around the detailed analysis that we needed to do, as well as working with management to just develop a guideline that will then show, according to those categories that we would have identified, what management then needs to do to address those specific issues. That is the work that is ongoing now to make sure that we now start dealing with those prior period issues. In the next slide is also around contingencies. One of the issues that had been highlighted was the completeness of the contingencies, and this largely relates to the litigation work that litigation that the fund gets engaged in as a result of the work that we do. And in the last financial year, in the last two financial years, we've actually not been able to get adequate confirmations from or the AG has not been able to get adequate confirmations from the state attorney when there is any contingencies that we needed to disclose, whether is it cases, what is the quantum of those cases, and what is the exposure that the fund is facing, as well as confirming some of these. So some of the activities that we had then embarked on was to so some of these activities was to look at the legal case management system. We've implemented a legal case management system, which would also enable us to be able to scan and keep electronic records of all active legal cases, so that at the time when we have to prepare financial statements, we don't have to be manually looking for information as well, so that we can also start doing confirmations with the state attorney ourselves on a regular basis, so that at the end of the financial year, when the AG does do confirmations, in an event that the AG is not able to get those confirmations from the state attorney, we can then, as an alternative method, provide them with the confirmations that we have obtained from the state attorney ourselves. We also then enhance the legal case management to be able to scan, so that we have supporting documentation for each of the items that we have on our registers. We also wanted to do, so one of the issues that had been raised under contingencies was also around the reconciliation between so when we approve a pension for a claimant, we then expected to provide for the future values of these pensions over the life of the pensioner. And when we do report these on the balance sheet, we then need to show what is the current portion of these future pensions and what is the long-term portion that is beyond the
I don't know, colleagues, this is not good. It's gone again.
Yeah, no, it's not good at all, Chair. That's why we need Parliament.
Hey, kushile nje man.
Sengisho ukuthi yeah, basichanile.
Because I don't know how we proceed with this.
We'll
Net-
need physical meetings, Chair.
Yeah, colleagues.
So not only that, I think the DG should have put a plan in case this happens, because this always happens because the network, you cannot really know whether you're going to have it. Hence, a contingency plan should have been put in place so that some of the DG's team can quickly come in and complete the presentation. I don't think we are being taken in serious here.
I foresee a similar situation happening when questions are posed and response will be expected. We'll be faced with a situation where we won't get the essence of the response. Even throughout the entire presentation, some of the key and critical dates and issues that he was highlighting, we kept on getting cut and not hearing the detailed presentation, Chair. So I'm not sure whether it will be a productive or useful exercise to continue if there's no contingents, as Umam Tolash is saying. Perhaps the commissioner, I'm sure they work as a collective. They are well aware of the issues. So anyone who's in a position to continue from a stable network position can do that. Otherwise, the DG, no, it's becoming a futile exercise.
Honorable, I agree. Honorable Liz?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, my concern really is that this issue has been delayed and delayed and delayed, and I hope that I'm really surprised that a network issue can actually be allowed to do this. We all have data on our phones. Surely the DG can connect through some other way. It's outrageous that that we can just blame the connection. Right now, I'm sitting in my office in Mark's building and I'm battling with the parliamentary Wi-Fi. I'm having to switch to my data to be able to monitor this meeting, this very meeting. I'm just a layman here, MP, the DG sitting with all sorts of technical help there. It's outrageous, Mr. Chairman. The meeting really should go ahead, but I do accept that it's, yeah. Anyway, this is typical of the Compensation Commission, I'm afraid. I mean, it's such a mess. They cannot even get a connection right to talk to members of Parliament. It's outrageous.
Yeah, it's actually very frustrating. You see, I'm also in Mark's building. I connected via my own data because the Parliament Wi-Fi was just, and network was just, and what Mamtolashe and yourself are saying is absolutely correct. If there was a problem with the connectivity, they know about it.
I'm here, Chair.
Yeah, you hear, Commissioner, but
Connected on an alternative device, Chair.
Yeah, you hear, but we're missing half your presentation. We're missing half the things you're saying. And members are raising correctly, so that, I mean, the inability to put in place contingency plans. We've been saddled with this issue of online meetings now for close to 2 years. So this is actually quite frustrating to say the least.
Can I continue, Chair?
DG, the challenge is that you are here. Few minutes later, you are not there. You come back again. So we keep on losing the essence of what you are saying. It therefore becomes a futile exercise. The time that we have allowed you to present to us, we have lost some of the key issues. I hope you understand what we're trying to raise. We are saying if one amongst your team is in a better placed position where the network is not a challenge, the likes of the commissioner, can't you afford that person an opportunity to take us through? Because it's starting to frustrate us having to lose some of the important issues that you are raising. We have given up on you. At least hand over to someone that can do a better job in terms of connectivity.
Oh, but I get the part about handing over, but the commissioner's got very serious questions to answer to. These disclaimers are happening on his watch. And so the issue that Mamtolashe and Honorable Lees raised specifically about a contingency plan is a problem. That's the issue. And we just, as you are saying, we are losing half the things he's saying. We are losing half the things he's saying. And they are important issues. So I don't know. Colleagues, can we, let's do this. It's 10:25. Commissioner, can we give you 5 minutes to sort out your connectivity issues, change devices, change networks, whatever it is that you need to do, and then we proceed. But I just, yeah.
We've checked that the device connection issues are connected on an alternative device. We can continue.
All right, let's see how this goes. Even now, though, you buffering, so I don't know, as you're speaking. Okay, proceed, Digaba, and then complete what you were saying.
Thank you, Chair. If the Secretariat can give Linda Kota the hosting rights so that he can then show the presentation, because I'm connecting from an iPad. So if I proceed as we're trying to get the connection, Chair, I was on this. The next slide is the next area is under irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure. We had about 12 actions that we had identified in this particular area, 11 of whom were reportable by end of December, and one was after the 31st of December. So of these, 8 were completed, and about 3 of them that were not finalized. If I go to the next slide then just gives the details in terms of the work that we've done. One was to finalize the process for the permanent structure for internal control unit, which is the unit that works with the CFO to manage issues around controls, compliance to PFMA, and management of audits. And one of the issues also, we have a financial misconduct advisory committee, which is appointed by the DG to then deal with all determination of fruitless, wasteful, and irregular expenditure, and to speed up the turnaround time for dealing with such cases. We also then—
Commissioner, just 1 second. Can we get the presentation up, please?
So I'm trying to find Linda. Not sure I can identify.
Can Mr. Wababa then help? Can we give the DG the hosting rights also so that he can also be able to show the presentation on his side? We do have now. I was then on slide I'm now on slide 24, Chair. So the issues that we're dealing with now was the fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So part of the activities that we had completed, as I said, was the turnaround time for implementing stricter turnaround times on finalizing any resolutions that come out of the Financial Misconduct Committee, updating our SOPs with regards to employer relations, because any consequences that flow out of any findings from the Financial Misconduct Committee would then have to be dealt with through employee relations, and also the reconciliations of the registers to make sure to address the issues of completeness and accuracy. We then dealt with the reconciliation of the current registers that we have on fruitless and wasteful expenditure, as well as those that have been reported through fraud cases. And also then try and identify those high value priority cases that we can then give them a bit more attention with the Financial Misconduct Committee to deal with those and get them finalized. In the next slide is just the other administrative issues that have been highlighted in the audit report. We also developed action plans for these. Out of the 26 actions that we had identified in the action plan, 20 of them were due before the 31st of December, and 6 of them were due post 31st of December. So we have implemented about 19, and 1 was not completed as at the end of December. So part of the issues that we had finalized also was around the looking at all the compliance issues with SCM, updating the SOPs for the evaluation criteria on any bids to make sure that there is full compliance to the SCM regulations and guidelines that have been issued by National Treasury, and also to improve contract management, doing monthly reviews of all contracts that, as well as variations that we make on contracts to make sure that any variation that is done is within the allowable limits in terms of the Treasury regulations. And also with regards to management of assets, part of the issues that we had in the previous audits was around the way that we manage the assets, around reassessments of useful life of assets, as well as any values that we reflect on the balance sheet with regards to assets. So there is some checklists that were then implemented that then helps our asset management unit when they do the revaluations at the end of the financial year. They'll be able to use, and these are based on the relevant CRAP standards to make sure that we don't miss any of the requirements of the CRAP standards. So the only other issue that we had not finalized was also around at the end of December, was around producing reports that will then do the automatic calculation of the turnaround times on performance information, where there's key indicators that relates to turnaround times, to make sure that we don't have any disclaimers on performance as a result of reports that may be inaccurate or incomplete. We also then sought to then automate some of the calculation of these turnaround times so that we can then get that with a click of a button, as opposed to a manual calculation that has to be done on spreadsheets and registers outside of of the system. So this is a process that is aligned to the finalization of the reports in the Completeness system. And these are the reports that we'll also be using them for reporting by the end of the financial year this year. Chair, I think if I go to the next slide around there's some also other key considerations in the control environment, some of the issues that have been identified also in the summaries by the AG, as well as the analysis that was performed by management. We had identified about 9 actions here. Out of these 9 actions, 7 of them were due before the 31st of December, and 2 were due after the 31st of December. So about 7 out of these 7, about 5 of them were completed by 31st of December, and 2 had not been completed, were still in progress. When we look at these, some of these were relating to also improving the turnaround time between once a ER process or employee relations process, be it a disciplinary process or any issue that as a result of consequence management, the turnaround time between when we do get the communication of whatever sanction and when it's once the presiding officers complete to when we action it, we just reduce the turnaround time to speed up the processes around some of the fraud cases, fruitless and wasteful expenditure cases that we were dealing with at the time. And also making sure that ER cases or status of these cases is monitored more closely at EXCO level, as well as within the audit, the clean audit project that we currently busy with. In instances where there is dependencies on the department, the Deputy Director General Corporate Services at the department also has then also been sensitized to make sure that any of the cases that have dependencies on their side, we all agree to adhere to the turnaround times that we are agreeing. One of the activities that we had indicated was that there were about 41 cases at the time that had been, that we were busy with from an ER point of view, and we needed to make sure that all of them have been dealt with and finalized. We were able to deal with almost all of them except for about 8 of the cases that as at end of the financial year, March 2021, had not been finalized and were still in progress. And these had not been concluded. We still had 3 or so cases that had not been finalized that were still in the disciplinary hearing stage. And we also wanted to augment capacity to the employee relations unit, particularly because of not only these particular cases or active cases that we have, but also any cases that would flow out of the forensic investigations that is going to be carried out by the appointed service providers to make sure that there isn't also delays if there is a need for action on any of those items, and this can be done as each report is completed. So that's the process that we currently busy with. We have not finalized it by end of December, but we will be finalizing it before the end of the financial year. Chair, that's the end of the presentation. Thank you very much, and apologies for this intermittent connection issues that we had.
All right. Thank you. Ma'am Dolash, let's go to you, and then Honorable Liz will come in.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Good morning to you, to the Chairperson of Department of Labor Portfolio Committee, Honorable Dunjwa. Good morning to the DM, colleagues, the delegation led by the DG. Good morning. Chair, I am really taken aback with this. I hope and pray that the DG will come forward to come and formally apologize for this, Chair. It cannot be like nothing has happened, when we know for a fact that no one at this day and age can experience what we're experiencing with the kinds of package that from the DG to the last person in the department are getting to make sure that oversight is effective and is being respected. I take serious offense, Chair, with this. I guess somebody must come forward. I also would want to suggest that I think we need a physical meeting, Chair, so that we can do our work properly. Those are the two things that I thought I must just raise, Chair. Chair, listening from the department, you might think that we are dealing with something that has just happened overnight. I really want to trace back the fact that this that we're talking about today, it has been happening for the last 11 financial years. The fund has been receiving disclaimers and adverse audit opinion. This is why we are here today. In the last meeting, we received all this that the commissioner has just presented. However, from where we are sitting, we are dealing with the audit findings of 2020-2021, wherefore what is being reported by the AG, we get to see that nothing has in fact happened differently. Why I'm saying that, Chair, is because all the qualifications areas that are being identified by the Auditor General are repeat finding, and they date back as far as 6 years, Chair. I'm not going to read all of them, but I'll just make mention of the few. For example, the revenue from the non-exchange transaction and receivable benefit, the irregular expenditure, fruitless and wasteful expenditure, payables from non-exchange transactions, and so on and so on. Under irregular expenditure and fruitless and wasteful expenditure, the AG reported the fact that the effective steps were not taken to prevent irregular expenditure and fruitless and wasteful expenditure as required by the section 51.1b.2 of the PFMA. Again, he made mention of the fact that the irregular expenditure disclosed was mainly incurred due to non-compliance with the procurement requirements. I'm just mentioning those, Chair, just as a highlight, because we all have that audit outcome. The department does have it. Hence, I'm saying, Chair, the responses we might think there is something that has just happened last month or last year, but this has been occurring for the last 11 years. And the most serious part of it, as you are listening from the presentation, you don't hear anything except for changing this and that. There's no consequence management that has been reported. And as such, this is 2021, all that had happened in the 2019-2020, which I thought this time we'll be getting that full briefing that says what have the department done and the commissioner in particular to change things around. I am not going to mention all those, but as part of those that have been picked up by the AG, the revenue from the non-exchange transaction and statutory receivables, the Auditor General reported the fund did not correctly account for revenue. Employers were not accurately assessed in terms of the compensation for occupational injuries and disease act, that is COIDA. The management did not maintain proper accounting records and adequate controls over revenue assessment from the non-exchange transaction and statutory receivable. Lastly, the fund did not implement adequate and appropriate controls to address the completeness and accuracy of the employer contributions. Chair, some employers' returns of earning were not assessed. Our concern in this regard, Chair, is this repeat of finding does in fact, the adequate with relevant skills as well as qualification. Just want to ask a direct question. Are these officials provided with training, especially on areas around the COIDA Act, so as to avoid that has just been mentioned by the AG's report? Why did the management not ensure that there are proper accounting records and control over the revenue assessment? What measures are there in place to ensure that these records and controls are put in place in the future, Chair? Lastly, were there any performance bonuses paid to the employees responsible record keeping, revenue management? If yes, why were they paid revenue but they did not perform as required? I'm not going to say all those, but these are some of the concerns that we're having, which are not being addressed for the last 11 years, but especially for the 2021 AG's report. The issue for consideration by us, Chair, is one, the investment is unlisted companies has always been an area of concern for many years. The Auditor General has been raising this issue for a number of financial years. Does this fund, Chair, have a plan to ensure that the investment is unlisted companies is correctly accounted for? Does the fund provide adequate training to officials responsible for investment in associates to ensure that they are kept abreast of all the requirements needed to properly account for investment in associates? If that's the case, is there a plan in place to ensure that this finding from Auditor General is correctly addressed? I would want to hear. The other matter that has been raised by the AG is the issue of internal controls. I'm not going to go through there, but Chair, what I would want to know, what are the plans to address these internal control deficiencies that are being identified by the AG? Chair, in our last meeting as COPA, interacting with the fund, Chair, we did raise the issues and the minister did submit a plan that he was to embark on in order for him and his team to be able to address those. However, Chair, the plan fell short to really identify what is this that needs to be done. My fear here, Chair, is that from a distance, the department and the fund seems to be stable. You have a deep G who have been there for quite a number of years, as well as the commissioner and everybody else. But you don't find a strategy to turn things around, to make sure that the history of 11 years, the 6 years, the 2021, 2022 in particular is being addressed. You hear everything is being said like it is the case it was the case last year, 2021. It was also the case in the 5th Parliament, wherein you are made to sit and listen for things that are never implemented anyway, hence the history. I just want to say, Chair, it's like nothing has been said, because all that has been raised does not seem to be addressed. Yes, there are words that are being put coherently, but looking at the actuals, you don't find any of those. So, Chair, I'm raising this to say it does not give us any different picture from what we got. And I got a feeling, Chair, that says, how about now as SCOPA, look at what needs to be done by us with the experience that we are getting from the department and all other institutions, especially when we have got this funny historical arrangement of a fund that has never been able to account properly, with everybody in place from the DG to the last person. But you don't hear anything that talks to the consequence management, but you get stacks and stacks of presentation that does not give a text, an ordinary South African that is paying tax for the department to be able to do its business. Doesn't find anything that says we are taking you seriously, we are changing things around, and if we have picked up any deficiencies, we made people to be accountable as per the BFMA. Maybe, Chair, when this discussion is being closed, the DG must come in to tell us what has he done, except for all this nice presentation, exactly what is being done to make sure that, because the errors that are being reported in the last year and the 6 years, as well as 11 years, are being created by a human being who is in the payroll of the department. But you don't hear anything. And gone are the days where we are going to talk and South African taxpayers going to be happy with our talking without doing anything? I think the time has come now for us to be able to say, for those who don't do what they are supposed to be doing according to the law, we do what we are given responsibilities to do. Because I don't see any change. I don't see any indication that we'll get anything differently. I see we received the presentation from the minister. However, the feedback does not give you anything different. Things are being done in 6 months' time, in 3 months. Whereas the problem has been there for the last year financially, as well as for the last 6 years, towards 11 years. Chair, I think I must just end there to raise my issues and say, Chair, here we are not being taken seriously in the first place. And if we're going to keep on doing this, Chair, I don't think taxpayers will be happy with us. I think our strategy must now change to say, what is this that we as a committee are going to do? With the fact that the minister is not doing what is expected to do, the DG is not doing what is expected to do, as COPA, we need to do something so that we sit in these chairs being salaried by the taxpayers, but do something on their behalf. Thank you.
All right, no, thanks, Ma'am Tolashe. I think you have placed quite a number of issues on the table, and all of them are very significant. Can we get responses to those, all those issues, and then we can proceed. So compensation fund, over to you.
Morning, Chair and honorable members. Chair, I think firstly I would like to apologize for the intermittent break in connection. In fact, even when we use data, we do not have a proper connection. So we respectfully apologize for that. We respect the oversight, and we've always respected the oversight. The fund has been receiving disclaimers for the past 11 years. And there's a session that nothing has been done, and these are repeat findings. The committee will remember that when I started as a Director General in this department, I appeared before SCOPA. And I said before SCOPA that the problems at Compensation Fund have been there for a long, long time, long before myself and the team that is here, were part of the institution. We then presented a plan to the committee. And I did say this to the committee, that if our focus is to address the audit findings, we will not be solving the problems at the Compensation Fund, because the problems were systemic, and they touched on the structure of the organization and how the organization was functioning. So we then said, with this plan, we'll first address a number of issues. I mean, it's easy for us to say we could address what AG is saying, address it, and then for AG to pick it up in the following year, because we have not addressed the root causes of the findings. So key things that we needed to do, and in the presentation that Commissioner Mafata did, you could actually see that we have been consistent in saying that we need to address issues relating to people, system, the technology that that we are using, and also going full automation. So we inherited an institution that was not, its operation was not automated. So we needed to make sure that we automate it. And once we did that through the Completeness system, we needed to migrate data that was sitting on the legacy system. And of course, that presented its own problems. And we also needed to address the issue of competencies. And you'll see that in all the plans that we've had, even the plans that were presented by the minister, we made a commitment that we will indeed address that. And we could not have addressed the AG findings without having addressed all the systemic issues that I've spoken about, including have a reliable system. And we're happy that AG audited the system that we have now, Completeness, and they did not find a fault with it, which means that the controls that we've put on the system are now working, and we are now poised to deal with other areas that continue to present us with challenges. So that's on the system side. And we continue to have discussions with AG on a number of issues that we're disagreeing on, that relates to the fact that we are fully automated, and part of being fully automated means that you will not have anything that is done manually. You will not have hard copies, all these things, and how we deal with third parties that are transacting on our system. So we have all these things, on our radar. And I do want to say to the committee that we are at the last end of the implementation of our plan. And we hopeful, in fact, we know that before the end of this financial year, all these things that have plagued the compensation fund would have been addressed. That's the commitment that we all have, and that's a commitment that we are making. I could have easily have dismissed everybody here, and that I think would not have solved the problem. In fact, Chair, you'll remember that when I started, one of the assessments that we made with regards to the previous management that was here was to look at the skills, the competencies, and all that. And part of the consequence management in my book was to make sure that we remove everybody who is not correctly placed. One of the problems that we had here is that people were just placed without the necessary competencies and qualifications into different and key positions for that matter. And I'll give you one classical example that at one stage, the head of medical services was somebody who's not medically qualified. And the fact that the operations of this fund were centralized at head office. So we needed to decentralize the work of the fund. We needed to make sure that we appoint nurses, we appoint doctors in provinces. So the assertion that there's absolutely nothing that we have done is not correct. I disagree with it because there's a lot of work that we have done. Yes, that work for now has not translated into us getting a clean audit. And for that matter, I was not surprised that we didn't get a clean audit. We got a disclaimer, because part of the things that we said we will do and that we are committed to do are part of the action plan that we presented to the committee. So the honorable member chair said we have not indicated what plans do we have, what strategies do we have. Yet we presented to the committee the plans, we presented the committee the strategies, and we presented how long it will take us to arrive at this point. Now, on the issue of whether bonuses were paid
just 1 second.
for poor performance.
DG,
None of the top management sitting here were paid bonuses
DG,
because because of the work that
DG,
that they've done and the fact that the fund has not been doing well.
Director General.
We agree that
can somebody draw the DG's
there are
attention?
areas that, in fact, as the commissioner
General.
was presenting,
DG, I'm not sure if the DG can hear us. Is the DG there?
Chair, I've muted the DG. I was hoping somebody would draw to his attention that you need to speak.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can hear us or not. I don't know.
I'm muted.
All this time I'm muted.
DG.
Sorry.
DG.
Yes, Chair.
Yes, Chair. Have your attention. Right, DG. I hear what you are saying, and all those things have, not all, some have been explained. I just maybe testify for many into context. How long have you been the DG? And how long has the commissioner been a commissioner at the compensation fund?
I've been a DG for 7 years, Chair.
Right,
and the commissioner has been a commissioner for 5 years. 5 years going to 6 now.
Right. So we're dealing with 11 years of adverse or disclaimed audit outcomes.
Yes.
So right. All these, so in the majority, on your watch, 7 out of 11, and just under half on the watch of the commissioner. So I hope that context channels you in the direction of what Mam Tolash is saying. I really, because I hear what you're saying, but I think the flip side of the coin must not be lost to us. That nobody is expecting miraculously that overnight you're going to move out of a disclaimer all the way to a clean audit. We might expect qualifications, yes, along the way. That is maybe not fine, but it's progress. But out of the 11 years of the disclaimers or adverse audit outcomes we are speaking about, 7 have been on your watch. And so, and the 5 on the watch of the commissioner. So I just hope that in responding to these things and placing them in a particular historical context, there's an appreciation of that on one end, but the other one is to say that you were employed precisely because there was an expectation that there would be movement amongst others in the audit outcomes. There hasn't been. So I think that the disagreements that you may have must find themselves in a particular way measured in accepting the fact that ultimately the buck stops with you. And here we are now, yet again, speaking about another disclaimer. It's just the worst audit outcome that there is.
Chair.
Yeah, so I really hope that, because I hear that it's everybody else but yourselves. It's an inherited reality in what Mam Tolash has been painting to you. I just wanted to draw the attention of the DG to that as he continues to respond to his questions, and then Honorable Lisa and then Honorable Hatib. I just wanted to point that out. Let's not really speak as though this is a new DG or a new commissioner. These audit outcomes are squarely on your table, at your doorstep, on your shoulders, whichever expression suffices. I just wanted to clarify that, particularly on the basis that in the 5th Parliament, Scopa visited the compensation fund. We have been interacting with the compensation fund. We have raised these matters time and time again. And the main issue we have had is that you continue to be disclaimed. And there's no improvement. The only time we're going to satisfy ourselves that there's an improvement is when you come out of a disclaimer. And that hasn't happened. Because I just think that the pushback on what Mamtolashe has to say, in my view, does not take any responsibility and seeks to embrace no accountability. The buck stops with you, DJ and Commissioner. So you can continue responding, but I thought that context was important.
Yeah, I did acknowledge that the buck stops. I did acknowledge that the buck stops with me. But in the context that you've indicated, Chair, to simply apportion the blame on the DG and the Commissioner without also reflecting on the context in which we find the institution and the context in which the disclaimers took place. It will also be wrong of me not to indicate that context. Because if I inherited an institution that had all the systems in place, that was properly structured, it will then mean that for whatever happens, I must take responsibility for it. However, all these years that I've been in this department, I have presented a plan to the committee, and I said, this is what I intend to do. And in fact, with some of the problems that have always been plaguing this fund, if we had not taken the steps that we've taken, this institution would have closed down. We accept that in so many people's eyes, an audit outcome is a measure of progress that the institution is making. But that instrument that is being used alone does not paint the real picture. And it gives an impression that there's absolutely nothing that is being done. And yet there's a lot of work that is being done here to address the challenges. And in fact, the fact that we've moved and we have an IT system now with the controls that are built on that system is again a testimony of the fact that we have been at work trying to address the problem. I take full responsibility for the fact that we have not moved we have not moved beyond a disclaimer to a qualification or to a clean audit, and that's our plan, and that's what we want to achieve, and we think that we are at the right time now where we can achieve that. After having done all the work that we have done, I think we are positioned to go beyond the disclaimer. I just wanted to make that point, Chair. Thanks.
Are you there, Mr. Chairman?
I am, actually. I am. Yeah, Honorable Liz, you can proceed.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The President Ramaphosa made some far-reaching remarks in his speech last week, and one of them was the question of red tape. Mr. Chairman, the DG is right. The audit outcome is but one measurement of the performance of any entity, but it's quite an important one, I think. But the most important one, Mr. Chairman, is the service that the entity provides. That is the most important one. And the Compensation Commission provides a shocking service. And so whether it's systemic or what it is, Mr. Chairman, does not matter to the client. The client wants the service. I happen to be a client, and I think others on this meeting are clients. And Mr. Chairman, I would suggest to you that in 7 years, if the compensation fund had been handed to a private enterprise, it would by now be operating very efficiently and giving a good service. Mr. Chairman, people out there are desperate. During this meeting, I have had a phone call from a desperate client of the Commission. The client's name is Monster Security Services. They submitted their ROE, return of earnings, for the previous financial year on time. They were then told they were going to be audited. They supplied all the documents that were required for the audit. Strangely enough, they're being audited because their turnover had decreased from the previous year. Well, anyone with an iota of thought would understand that during the COVID lockdowns and year, there would likely be, in many cases, a reduction in turnover. Nevertheless, the audit was asked for. No response. The client is desperate. They are being turned down in tenders because they don't have a letter of good standing from the Commission. They have a tender closing tomorrow, and the client's been on the phone to the Commission today to try desperately to get some sort of response from the Commission. Nothing. Nothing. Mr. Chairman, that is the measurement of any work being done by the department and the Commission. That is the ultimate measurement. So, Mr. Chairman, I've got the registration number for this particular client of the Commission, and I shall give it, it's 2, and I hope someone there is making a note, 2014/158812/07. Commissioner, I'd expect you to now go personally and see what the blockage is with this particular client of yours. Mr. Chairman, it is outrageous. It is completely unacceptable that we have the excuses given to us by the DG. After 7 years, he's just still telling us that it's systemic. They've put an IT system in place. Well, does that IT system send out notices that ROEs are now due? As far as I know, it doesn't. In the old manual system 10 years ago, I used to get a notice. Now I get nothing. Nothing. This is the new system. Mr. Chairman, I have some questions about figures in the annual report. So on page 95, there's a reference to intercepted payments and fraudulent claims. But there's no detail given in the annual report of what exactly these are. So what are they? They're about 100 million, I think, if I remember correctly. What is an intercepted payment? Then, Mr. Chairman, on page 13, as we call it up, if I can find the right one. Please be patient, Mr. Chairman. I'm really, myself, I think we're all losing patience with the Commission. Yeah, so there's an indication of various parties, 71,812,518 rand, case investigated in finalized anti-fraud and corruption units, et cetera, Can we have some detail about who these various parties are that amounted to nearly 72 million rand? Mr. Chairman, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm really so upset. You know, I've just been dealing with, on the telephone, I don't know why I took the call, but I'm very pleased I did take the call, with someone who is basically in tears. There's a business that's likely just simply to close down, employees to lose their jobs. And yet, President Ramaphosa has emphatically said, red tape must be dealt with. And here we have the DG saying, well, it's taking some time and, you know, we'll get there eventually. No, it's unacceptable, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Honorable Liz. All right, let's get responses to that.
Thank you, Chair. Just responding, so earlier on, Honorable Stolashis was reading out of the audit report.
Commissioner, just 1 second. You've got feedback like there's another device in the room. It's like one of those radio things. I see you speaking from the boardroom. Maybe there's another device that's got a feedback. Can you just try again?
Okay, thank you, Chair. So, Chair, earlier on, Honorable Talashi spoke, read out of the audit report the issues that the Auditor General had raised around our management of revenue and the absence of controls in the management of revenue from non-exchange transactions. So a lot of the issues, issues around audit that have been flagged by Honorable Liz is actually those controls that we've put in place to make sure that whatever earnings that are declared by an employer, we're able to verify. So flagging an employer for audit is a control measure in instances where if the revenue that has been declared by an employer or the earnings that have been declared by an employer in the current year significantly differs from the earnings that have been declared by the same employer in the prior period. And flagging for audit is those controls that we put in place to verify if indeed that those changes are genuine. And when an employer is flagged for audit, an employer gets an email which would list issues and items that they would need to submit to the compensation fund for the compensation fund to be able to carry out the audit and clear the flagging for audit so that the employer can then be able to pay to be assessed and pay the assessment that has been made. If the employer does not cooperate or does not provide the information that has been requested, it would result in the frustrations that Honorable Liz was speaking about earlier.
Sorry, Mr. I must interrupt. The employer did respond. The employer did submit everything. Please, Mr. Chairman, can we not obfuscate and make excuses all the time? I'm not a fool. I understand what verification is. And I said to you that we accepted, although the reason of a reduced turnover at a time of COVID would surely have required a little bit more thought, Mr. Chairman, but the information was supplied.
All right, the information was supplied. I think a number has been given, a reference number. I think that's what you gave, Honorable Liz. Let's just leave that at that. And in that case, be taken up, and we can do a follow-up in a week as to the progress of that particular matter. But otherwise, ngiyabona sizukuzwana kulo mhlangano. Nje lokhu kwangempela futhi.
Thank you, Chair. We will reach out to Honorable Liz just to get because we need the correct CF registration number. We'll get that from the Honorable Member and then attend to it. Chair, the second issue, the question on page 95 of the annual report, what is an intercepted claim and fraudulent claims? So in the course of processing claims, we do come across instances where a claim may have been fraudulently submitted and inadvertently also then fraudulently paid into a claimant that is not, or person that is not the injured worker, or in some cases, even the bank account that is used to pay into the claim into would then not be the correct banking details of the claimant as a result of whatever fraud syndicates that would attack the fund and intercept some of these payments. So that's what that indication is on page 95. We prepare the financial statements in accordance to GRAP, so there is no requirement for us to provide that list, but that list we will provide to the committee so that it highlights what those details are. We do have it, we'll be able to submit it at the end of this meeting. That shows what makes up the amount that is reflected on the financial statements. And I think it's the same with the issue of the 71 million, because the 71 million is the fraud cases that were investigated in the last financial year, which included those that had been intercepted. And the parties, and almost all of these cases are before the law enforcement agencies as we speak. We will be able to provide that list as well to the committee before at the end of this meeting. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions, colleagues? I don't see an indication in the group. Colleagues can indicate if they wish to speak.
Yes, Chair.
Honorable Hatebu with an H, you may proceed.
Yeah, thanks. I must say, today's meeting is really frustrating. Let me first focus on the presentation as it was shared with us early this morning and presented to us by the Commissioner. I'm struggling to make sense of these timeframes, and they are too vague, Chair. If you, for an example, go to slide 5, there are a whole lot of, just go to slide number 5. The summary of the progress of issues that were meant to be completed from June to 31st of December 2021. That's the action plan. It has highlighted all the issues that have been completed to date, outstanding, and it has indicated the number of issues that will have to be completed before the end of 31st March 2022. Now, you would see that there's a difference in terms of outstanding issues. For an example, if you take the first one, which is revenue and receivable from non-exchange transaction, issues that are outstanding are 9, but they can only implement 3. Now, I was expecting that when they were dealing with the update status per focus category, they will give more details. But what that status per focus category does, it just say, well, we're planning to implement 42, we only completed 33, 9 it's outstanding. And they will be implemented after the 31st of December. I don't know what date is after the 31st, the chair. Yesterday it was after the 31st, today it is after the 31st. Now for monitoring, evaluation and review of your action plan, chair, you need to have specific dates so that we are able to monitor progress. If you just say after the 31st, it's an open-ended date. In all these focus category are not specific. We know from the previous slide that between December and March, you'll only implement 12. What happened to the 19? Now, that's an indication, Chair. I often make this statement that you cannot monitor that which you can't measure. So we don't know what's going to happen with that 19 action plans that are not listed here. Can I just get clarity, Chair, on the dates that are vague and request in future to also give reasons for not implementing what you had initially planned to implement, for you to just give us numbers and what has not been implemented without giving reasons. How then are we going to be convinced that there are remedial actions in place to remedy the situation that led to you not being able to implement what you have planned to implement? If, Chair, I'm expected to arrive at the City Hall at 10 o'clock with my car with 5 people, if I arrive at 11 with 3 people, surely those that are expecting 5 won't be accept the fact that, yes, we are here at 11 and we are 3. They want to know what happened to the other 2 and why we are late. No, I had a puncture, there was traffic on the road, the other 2 people were late, or they got sick, they're no longer coming. At least I understand why you failed to deliver 5 and you arrive with 3. But this report does not tell us that. It is not the progress report that contains detailed information. It's not a progress report that contains mitigating factors. It is not the progress report that tells us what led to the failure in achieving the planned actions that were meant to be achieved on the 31st of December, 2021. Can I get that response, Chair? Thank you.
All right, Honorable Hadebe with an H. Can we get a response to that?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, so what is reflected here on the slide, I think I do take note of the comment around us not providing the reasons for not implementing the targets. So that's something that we didn't include in the presentation. We'll make sure that we include that going forward. There are reasons why for each of these activities why we have not been able to complete them by end of December as we initially intended. And for some of these, we've extended some of the, actually determined the dates. Each responsible head would then have to come up with a catch-up plan that indicates by when they're going to complete these activities if they have not completed them by a specific time. So we'll make sure that we, in future presentations, we just incorporate that element for each of those items that may not be complete at the end of the reporting period. But just to explain the slide 5. So the item is in blue relates to aside from the activities that were due to be reported at the reporting date.
Commissioner.
Yes, sir.
Sorry to interject. I understand exactly what is contained on slide 5. and the color coding. I was merely giving you an example of what we have achieved and what we have not achieved and what is outstanding. And I was saying to you, your summary is not giving details. 2, there are 19 action plans that are not included in the other slide. What happened to them? Don't explain what is contained there. Explain what happened to the 19 outstanding, because if you look into the blue, you will only achieve 12 on the 31st of March. You have 31 that is not complete. 12 minus 31, you are left with 19. Where is the 19? So that we save time. So that we save time in explaining the color coding and the content and the context of that slide. Thank you. And my apologies for interjecting.
Thanks. Chair, I was trying to explain that. So you cannot minus the 12 from 31. These are two separate activities. So that's what I was trying to explain earlier on, that what we are tracking in blue is outside, because the 31 is the items that were forming part of the 169 that was reportable by end of December 2021. And out of those 169, 31 of them were not complete. And I indicated in my presentation that as part of our ongoing monitoring, we also want to keep track of what are those actions that are reportable in the next reporting term, which is the end of the quarter, so that whoever is implementing any of the activities, they don't get lost in only looking at the items that were not completed in December, but they know that in addition to those items that were not completed by December, you also have 12 items in the same quarter that you are currently tracking that you need to implement as well. Thanks.
So you are simply saying, out of the 31 that is outstanding, we should add 12.
Yes, Chair.
And when you are saying to us after December, what is after December 31st? Because only 12 you are
so these are
giving us. I'm saying only 12 where you are giving us dates, which is the 31st of March. The 31, you are simply saying after 31st of December. And I don't think that will help in terms of our monitoring exercise. We want the actual date where you're going to achieve the outstanding plans. I'm listening.
Thanks,
I'm
Honorable
listening.
Hatebe. So
I've lost you.
these are indicators that we also need to include in the presentation to show what are the dates for each of those items.
So presenting to us today, you don't know
Okay,
the
Chair,
dates.
can you hear me now?
I'm losing you. Your connectivity, it's a challenge. But if you can proceed, please do so.
But if you can proceed,
use this one. Okay, thanks. Honorable Hadebe, I'm speaking from the DG's device now.
Yes, Commissioner.
So we do take note of the point. So what we did not include in our presentation is then to show for all those items that we've not completed, what is the time that these are going to be completed. But they should be completed. The expectation is that they're completed by the end of the quarter, which is the 31st of March 2022. So we'll provide, I think in subsequent presentations, we'll make sure whether there's items that are outstanding will indicate exactly what is the intended completion time if they've not been completed by the time as per the plan. And also highlight what are the reasons that would have led to us not completing that on time and what mitigating plans we've put in place to make sure that we implement them on time. Thanks, Chair.
So you have that information available at your disposal. You chose not to furnish that with us, or didn't see a need to provide that with us. Fair enough. Can we then give you a time frame for you to finish with us with that information? A week, if it's readily available, a week will be enough. Or even after this meeting, if the information it's available.
We'll provide it, Chair, by the end of the week. We just need to, because part of our operational working document, so we just need to clean it up a bit. So if we can submit by Friday, Chair, we'll do so.
Okay. But how do you present to someone who is not hands-on in terms of your daily operation a report that is vague? I'm trying to understand the hello, Chair.
Proceed on
Uyakhuluma,
proceed.
uyakhuluma. Hlalo.
Kubeka Pungan.
Oh, okay. No, thanks. Commissioner, I'm saying one wonders what was the plan and intention of limiting us in terms of the information. Now we'll have to wait another week. Probably you are not aware, we've got line-up meetings, scope, we're dealing with other issues. I'm humbly requesting for future purposes, please provide us with full and detailed information. If you saw it fit to indicate the deadline for the items listed in blue, I see no reason why you did not include the deadline for the item highlighted in red. To me, that only speaks to one thing, that you don't know when and how you're going to complete those activities. And if you know, that information could be presented to us immediately after this meeting or tomorrow. So for you to ask for a week, as I proposed, it's a clear and simple indication that you're still going to look around for the information. That is highly unacceptable for a department that has had 11 disclaimer audit opinion. You have been responsible for 7 of those based on the number of years that you were involved in that department. And you're saying to us the IT system with controls built in has been put in place as one of your successes. But the question is, what are the positive results that have been produced by that IT system? Do you care to share with us any positives? Because the audit opinion does not reflect any improvement. In fact, it's the regression. Please share with us the positives of the IT system that you highlighted as one of your key success in relation to the disclaim audit opinion. Commissioner, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So Chair, maybe just highlight, we implemented Comp Easy from the 19th of October, 2020. And if you look at some of the highlights that we've implemented in the system or that we've achieved in the system, one is we've created an online platform for any person who interacts with the compensation fund, an employer who wants to submit a claim, a medical practitioner who wants to submit a medical invoice or a pre-authorization request can do so online. And we've created a platform that allows them, should they wish to do this themselves, they don't need to go to a third party or anybody else to help them to do this, because they can then submit this on their own. We have improved validation controls over, number one, registration of users on the system. So only a person who is authorized by an employer can submit a claim on behalf of an employer or a claim on behalf of a medical practitioner. Nobody can submit anything on behalf of anybody if there is no if it hasn't passed any validations that we've put in place. Claims, invoices that come into the system goes through a validation process. that ensures that only valid claims are submitted to the compensation fund. In the last 2.5 years that we've implemented, or a year and a half that we've implemented the system, we've paid over 4 billion rands in claims. And all these claims have gone through this particular validation process. And we know that what we're paying is submitted by the correct person, and it has gone to also the correct person. Over and above that, we've also implemented, I spoke to the account verification system that came as part of the implementation of the new claims management system. Any payment that goes to the bank has to be validated through the account verification system to check whether the claim that we are paying, the bank account belongs to the claimant, and if the bank account doesn't belong to the claimant, we're then able to deal with those exceptions and find reasons why this should be paid and so on. So these are at a high level. These are some of the highlights of this system. It has been subjected to audit, and the control weaknesses that had been identified in the previous system that we're using were not existent in this current system that we are now using. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Turning into your financial statement submitted for audit, it does not meet the required standards. The Auditor General complains that you are relying or dependent on audit process to correct the misstatement on your financial statement, and not all the misstatement has been corrected. Why is it that you are unable to produce quality financial statement? Why are you dependent on the audit process to correct the misstatement and submit proper statement for audit? Are you unable to just submit a mere financial statement that is professional, in line with the standard of audit? What's happening there?
Can we get
Thanks, Chair. Okay, thank you, Chair. So, Chair, so the DG has highlighted also earlier on some of the systemic issues that we still currently dealing with that still influences the information that we use to compile financial statements. So while granted there are some areas where there is errors that would have been made in the compilation of financial statements, in some of the cases, these things relate to the systemic issues that we've had with the balances that we're still currently carrying on our financials, on our financial statements. And as such, we then unable even to correct some of these misstatements by the end of the audit when the AG is finalizing the audit. And in such cases where we've not been able to finalize those, we then deal with them as prior period correction of errors when we do compile financial statements in the subsequent periods. So when the AG does come in for the status of records review as part of their planning for the audit, we then present them with all those corrections that we could not do on time at the end of the audit process, so that those can also be subjected to the audit. Thanks, Chair.
I guess I'm trying to find out what is it that you will do to completely eradicate dependence on audit or a process for you to submit proper audit statement. What are the plans in place? It's not for the first time, it's not for the second, it's not for the third. It's been happening for years. There hasn't been an indication that you are going to move towards a process where you are no longer dependent on audit process to submit proper financial statement. Are the measures in place? 11 years gone past, 7 years of you and other 5 years of the senior management, no improvement. It's all good and well to highlight failures and challenges and blockages. What we want is solutions, tangible, practical, and implementable solutions, not plans that have failed for the past 11 years.
Thank you, Honorable
We,
Hadebe.
we are not
When I
in
was
a
making the
position.
presentation,
We are not in a position to accept theory at this juncture. It has been happening for 11 years. We want practical solutions.
thanks, Honorable Hadebe. So in my presentation earlier, I spoke to some of the processes that we've put in place to improve the completeness and accuracy of the financial statements. I spoke to reconciliation processes that we put in place, development of reports on Comp Easy that would help us, that would tie up with the figures that we're reporting in the financial statements. And these have been developed in the Comp Easy system, the new system that we've implemented, the reconciliation process that the CFO and his team have started to enforce and make sure that for every item that we have on our management accounts, every control account, there is a corresponding reconciliations, which is supported by reports that talk to transactions that make up the balances in the financial statements. So it is those processes that we've put in place that would make sure that would help us to address these issues related to misstatements that may have occurred in the financial statements in the past. In addition to that, dealing with all the prior period issues, I spoke to the process that we've put in place to deal with all prior period errors that have been reported by the AG, beginning with the analysis work that we've done over the last 10 years, and now with the action that is taking place to deal with each of those items that were forming part of the prior period errors from the past. Thanks, Chair.
But these are not new. What you are telling us is not new. And it has not yielded positive results. That's my issue.
Thanks, Chair. So I understand, Chair, this is what you're saying is not new, Chair, but the Comp Easy system is new. And all these measures that I'm talking about, we've put them in place in the Comp Easy system.
In 2020, the system?
We implemented the system in October 2019 and progressively released modules of that system over the course of the month.
2019, how many audits have you completed since then?
The audit that we've just passed was the first audit on the system.
And there is no improvement, it's still the disclaimer. That's my point. So you can't tell us about the system implemented in 2019 and has failed to produce results in 2021 that we must expect improvement. How long should it take for a system implemented in 2019 to produce positive results? And how much have you spent of incurred in that process from 2019, the implementation, maintenance of that system? How long have you incurred? Because there are no results.
Honorable Hadebe, you requested earlier for me to talk about the positives related to the Comp Easy system, and I've highlighted them. So those are some of the positive
I'm saying
that came out of
I'm concerned about your status of your audit opinion. For us to see change, it must be reflected in the outcome of your audit opinion. You have put system in place in 2019 to change things, and that should be reflected on your audit opinion. It has not been reflected to date.
All right, Honorable Hadebe, let's do this. You're not going to get the answers that you want, because you may have noted earlier on, there's disagreements with the AG in certain aspects of this auditing work that's being done. So you're not going to get those responses. And precisely, you're not going to get them because the culture at the compensation fund is that a disclaimer is a comfort zone. That's why. It's a conducive and an enabling environment just to do things as they wish and without any consequence or accountability. Zero accountability. And no matter how they can try and spin it, the bottom line is that audit is an assurance provider, in that it looks at financial management, it looks at leadership, it looks at controls, it looks at functionality, it looks at everything. And at the compensation fund, we have got absolutely nothing to go on. Nothing. And Deputy Minister, this is precisely why we are in this mess. What assurance do we have about all this information of the so-called successes that it's actually there when there is absolutely no audit? There's absolutely nothing. We must sit here and literally be expected to swallow down everything that we've been told and accept it as a gospel truth in the absence of an audit outcome, because when something is disclaimed, the auditor is literally saying, I'm not touching this mess because there's absolutely nothing here, or there's no access to scope, there's no paperwork, there's no paper trail, there's absolutely nothing. And there is a continuation of a nerve cheek and audacity on the part of the compensation fund and the department to just say the rest of us must go and jump off the nearest cliff, accept what they're saying, and they just don't care. So I think this interaction, for all intents and purposes, is everybody's waste of time until such time that the minister takes decisive action about the current leadership that is in the department and in the entity. Because we've got nothing that can assure us that the work that we are being told now, any success that is being pointed to, either one is there or is actually credible, because you have been disclaimed for 10 years. It's an absolute disaster, actually.
Chair, if I were to add, so that
And
they
Honorable
understand.
Lewis, you will come in after Honorable Haddev.
Yes, so that they understand our frustration when the Auditor General says to us, had it not been for legislative requirement to perform audit on public entities, I would have withdrawn my service from this entity. The Auditor General is fed up, does not want anything to do with this, but because of the legislative requirement, they were forced to audit you. Please understand our frustration from that context. You can't come here and paint a picture that of everything is under control when it's not. The Auditor General wanted to withdraw. Please take us into confidence and understand that we know exactly what's going on based on your audit outcome. Painting another narrative, it's not assisting in dealing with the situation. It further exacerbates the level of commitment from your side to the extent and the magnitude of the challenges that you are confronted with. Thank you, Chair.
Right, Honorable Liz, and then we'll bring this to a close and we'll map out a way forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a bit of a yeah, it's not quite the frustration we've been talking about, but something that's been raised a couple of times is the question of obtaining the audited results from investees. Now, as I understand accounting, there are procedures that you don't have to have the same year-end, financial year-end, to be able to consolidate entities or bring in. So why I'm raising this, Mr. Chairman, it's kind of raising a bit of a concern on my part that it's not just about year-end not coinciding. Perhaps these investees simply don't produce financial results. And so I would really like a very specific report, perhaps, of these entities that are apparently making it difficult for the Compensation Commission to produce financial results or reports. to be listed, and maybe we can be sent copies of their financial results so that we get some comfort, because both you and Honorable Khatebe have indicated we don't really have too much confidence because we don't have much to go on. We simply listen and are told things. And one of the things we've been told is, well, we have problems with year ends not coinciding. I'm not so sure that I accept that too easily. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Liz. The Chairperson of Employment and Labour, Mam Dondra.
My apology, Chair. My apology. Chair, can we also ask in relation to what they presented to us sometime, just check, was it in June, the investigation plan? Should we also ask?
We'll come to. Yeah,
all right. No, thanks.
Okay, Mam Dondra.
No, good afternoon, good morning, Chair, and good morning to all honorable members and the department and the DM. I hope I'm not overstretching my invite. I just want clarity so that I don't leave here in this meeting not trying to understand what what Honorable Khatebe was saying around what the AG said in terms of auditing compensation fund. If they were not compelled by law, they wouldn't. If I can just, if it's possible for him to repeat that. In fact, it's just a repeat so that I leave this meeting understanding what has then been said, if then I'm allowed to ask that, Chair.
Oh, you are more than allowed to ask that, Mam Dondra. Honorable Khatebe.
Yes, let me just read. In the audit report, Honorable Chair, the Auditor General reported that due to the limitation imposed on the scope of the audit by management, the audit opinion is disclaimed, and had it not been for the legislative requirement to perform the audit to the public entity, the Auditor General would have withdrawn from the audit.
No, thank you, Chair. I wanted to be clear that I understood it well. No, thank you. It was only that, nothing else.
Okay, ma'am.
All right, Honorable Khatebe, come to the point you wanted to come to. I just wanted to make sure we give the Chair of Employment and Labour an opportunity on the issue you were asking. Maybe that DM can actually take us on board. How far is the investigation and what's the progress? I think that is where you were, Honorable Khatebe, right?
Yes, no, thanks, Chair.
Okay.
We all know now that the minister submitted to us on the 21st of June the terms of reference for the investigation. And I think the scope is for 5 years, dating to 2016, 2017 to 2020, 21. And it is divided into 8 phases. So the clarity that one, after interacted with the plan, the terms of reference, they don't provide Chair with a clear time frame on the actual commencement of the investigation. There are no proposed dates for each phase. We don't know when will each phase commence and how long will it take for the completion of the other phase. The cost and estimated costs are not clearly stipulated. And this is in relation, Chair, to cost-benefit analysis. So that's the issue that I wanted clarity on, Chair, in terms of giving us status update and how far are they with the process, having submitted to us in June 2021. Has the tender been advertised for these purposes? When, if they have not started, When are they anticipating to start? If they've started, how far are they? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, the response to that, I'm sure DM and DG, you can give clarity on that.
Chair, can I provide a response?
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Chair, the 6 service providers have been appointed, as reported to the committee. The contracting process with the service providers were completed in January. The investigations unit is now busy with the planning for allocation of the cases to the service providers. So what we previously committed was that as each phase is completed, because the investigations, we may not be able to have a clear time frame of when each investigations, depending on how far deep the investigators have to go with their investigation work, because some of the investigation work may even involve some surveillance requirements and so on, which may, and also requests of documents from banks, from service cell phone providers and so on. So that in itself takes a bit of time. And we have committed that we'll report each case as it's completed. That would then be provided as a report to the committee chair. Once the planning is completed with the 6 service providers, we should be able to provide a clear plan that show for each of the investigations what is the estimated cost. We have set a budget for the investigations. It's just roughly around almost close to 500 million, Chair, for the investigations over the course of the contracting period that we have with the service providers. But once they have the scope of the cases, they'll be able to then give us a clear estimate for each of those cases, which may be less or equal to the amount that we've budgeted for these investigations.
Can I just get that again, Commissioner? You said you budgeted how much for the scope of the investigation?
We've budgeted almost 500 million, Chair.
For the investigations?
For the Chair, it's investigations of all areas of the compensation fund. So that's the estimated budget that we've provided for, but it's from the planning with the service providers that it will give us the actual costs, which may come out much less than what we have budgeted for, Chair. But all that will be in that plan once each of the service providers is.
Who are these service providers you're working with?
Chair, it's I don't have the list with me. We did provide the list to the committees in November, Chair. I'll just have to quickly check the list and the names that we've provided to the committee.
Commissioner, we ask these things so that you can place them on the public record and on the record, not us. So correspondence is one thing.
Chair, also, I also find it difficult to accept that they don't have a framework of when will each phase be completed, but the actual date, obviously, once the planning has been concluded. But if you know that this investigation might take 5 years, surely there has to be a draft framework that this 5 years is divided into 8, and each phase it's likely to be concluded at this time, so that you don't have, or we're faced with a situation where we come back for extension of time and increase of scope and extension of cost. We don't want that situation. You can't give service provider a blank check. There has to be some sort of a framework, at least appear as if you know what you want to achieve when. Don't leave it to the service provider to tell you.
Right. No, let's find Honorable Hadebe. I think let's get that concluded. I don't know, DM, to say,
Honorable Chairperson.
yeah, to say we are not happy would be an understatement of the highest order. And I want to believe that there's just simply no appreciation of the gravity of the situation. And there is a emerging trend with the compensation fund and the Department of Labor that oversight is an irritation and that it's a box-ticking exercise. I want to reiterate that audit outcomes are an enabler and an assurance provider. And they are an information tool for everyone. As things stand now, the compensation fund is at the bottom of the bottom, literally scraping the bottom. And from whatever vantage point anybody can look at it, there is simply no improvement, zilch, because there's no information. We are relying on hearsay. And I think, DM, that is fundamentally why I'm saying to say we are unhappy would be an understatement. Honorable Hatebe correctly points us out to the outlook of the Auditor General insofar as this entity is concerned. The DG tells us that there are areas of disagreement. I'm really not sure how anybody who's been disclaimed for 10 years or adverse for 10, 11 years is in any position to disagree with anything. There's an absolute collapse of systems at the compensation fund. And judging by the current attitude and outlook, there is no redemption in sight. We may sit here and speak to successes which are untested, assuming that they are a light at the end of the tunnel, only to find that as we get closer to the light, it's an oncoming train. So, I hope you, I mean, I know you've listened to what you've had to say and you'll interact with the portfolio committee. Our issue is that we are saddled with an institution that, to say is an ICU in itself would probably be yet again another understatement. But be that as it may, we're going to come back to these issues and probe through the annual report section by section. And Mam Tolashe has put here to us the issue of a physical meeting. The Secretariat, if you can check with the Parliament, when at the earliest convenience venues will be made available to us here in Parliament. I know that there is a process to beef up the capacity that's there under the circumstances to ensure that if committee rooms are required, we get them. There's venues in Marks Building, there's venues in 120 Plain, and there's venues at Good Hope. And I think there are venues that we can make use of in the NCOP building. And then we can have this meeting, because this online engagement is not helping. But DM, if you can convey to the minister as the executive authority, none of us seated here are actually convinced that there's progress. you disclaimed. So we don't trust anything you tell us. Because it's got no assurance, it's not tested. The AG is walking away from it. So I just hope that the department and the entity will leave here knowing we don't trust anything you are saying. Because there's no basis for us to do so. For all intents and purposes, that's what it is. So DM, I would really want the minister to indicate to us why these individuals who continue to occupy the offices they do are in office. The last time I said they must tell us why they should actually continue holding the offices that they do. On what basis can we sit here and be confident when these things are happening on their watch? DM, you are new, you arrived in 2019. Ministers new in this portfolio. The administration is not. And so unless we test credibly through these investigations, it must move with speed, because we should, whether are they not part of the problem, if not the problem. You know, our patience has run out with the compensation fund, because at every meeting, it's the same attitude. It's run out. So, DM, when the minister's back, please inform him that if he can inform us in 14 days why he believes the DG and the commissioner should be in their positions, the reasons for that. And then we'll come to the DG and the commissioner for them to explain to us why they should continue being in their positions. And then we'll make the necessary recommendations and put them to the House. Because unless something gives, unless there's consequence management, it's an absolute shame to have an entity which maintains a defiance in the face of disclaimers over 10 years and digs in its heels and just goes on business as usual and it's fine. No, we can justify why we are disclaimed and speak of inheriting issues when, by and large, the disclaimers we are speaking about now are happening on your watch, because you are not new individuals. Unless I'm insane, but I doubt I am, something's got to give. And let's stop fiddling on the edges and go right to the heart of the leadership of the institutions and the department where the buck stops. So, and then colleagues, we will come back to this entity. We will find a date and have a physical meeting and interrogate the annual report. And then let me just check, colleagues are indicating something here. Yeah, so I think we'll just leave it at that, because I don't think there's anything that we can hear that we can concretely say is credible. Because what assurances can we get other than the fact that we would rely on the AG, a Chapter 9 institution, by the way? So that's where we're going to leave it. I'm going to hand over to you to make concluding remarks, and then I just have a few announcements to make for the committee. But as things stand, the entire situation of the compensation fund is totally unacceptable.
Yeah, Chair, can I request that in preparation for that meeting where we'll probe in detail in the annual statement, we be given practical solutions on the mitigating factors to change the status quo. We can accept to be referred to systems implemented in 2019, yet they don't produce results, Chair. We humbly request so that we show the public and the entity show the public that indeed they are equal to the task. Trying becomes a futile exercise if all you do is constantly fail, and we'll reach a point where we don't accept theory in terms of resolving challenges. Thank you, Chair.
Right, no, it's fine. Honorable Khatib, I think on top of that, what we can do is that we will, ahead of that engagement, we will send a comprehensive list of additional information that we would want them to speak to on top of the annual report and the management letters and the audit action plans and so on and so forth. So we will build on what you are saying. Right, the Honorable Deputy Minister, may I hand over to you, ma'am?
Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you, honorable members of SCOPA and honorable members of the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labor. I think I feel you, Honorable Chairperson, and I think we are in this together. I think I will convey the message. I commit to convey the message to the minister, and I think we are. I'm not going to say much because we just have to await further instructions from yourselves as to what is the next course of action and when are we going to have another engagement. And we just commit, ours is to commit that we will make sure that in the next engagement that all the queries, questions, and outstanding issues that we might not have actually answered to the best of our abilities to the committee, we make sure that we close those gaps and we are able to revert back with a more credible report back to the committee itself. But I think we will be able to honor your 14 days that you have requested us that in the next 14 days, you would want to most probably be able to call for a next meeting. So I think in that period, we will have been able to gather the necessary information that is outstanding that might not have been adequately dealt with. And we will try to make sure that we also avail ourselves to the meeting that will be convened by your honorable selves, honorable members and honorable chairperson. I think I will stop there for now and we will await your further indulgence in these matters that has been put forward. Thank you so much, honorable members.
Right, and thank you very much, DM. We will be in touch probably by the end of the week with just our expectations and then the issues that have been raised by members. May I also take this opportunity to thank the chairperson of Employment and Labor and our colleagues in the Portfolio Committee, the SIU, AG, National Treasury, as always, thank you very much. DG and your team, Commissioner and your team, thank you very much. So on that score, the matters of the compensation fund will bring them to end there for today, and we will move forward in a structured way, which we will communicate in the coming days. Colleagues, just the one announcement that I want to make is that, as I think Sestombi has probably circulated the memo, which I was speaking about earlier.
Thank you, Chair. Can we step off the platform?
Yeah, you are. Thank you so much, DM. Yes, you may.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
I did receive a response from the president. And I sent it to legal. There was issues around the State Security Agency. There was a delay in them responding for a host of issues which they have tried to explain and rationalize with me. be that as it may, the legal opinion on those aspects of the State Security Agency have been clarified. The letter and the legal opinion should have reached you by now, and we will meet this afternoon or this evening. I know that the notification said 18:30, but I was suggesting 1800 hours because all we have on the sitting today is the president responding to the debate, and then we'll look at the matters. So the change of slot was necessitated by the delay in the response by legal services on the aspects which I asked them to clarify insofar as the president's letter is concerned. So I apologize for that delay, but I will ventilate all those issues at that meeting when we're dealing with that agenda item. I thought I should give the background to that as to why that happened. So that meeting is scheduled for this evening, and it was in consultation with the House Chairperson's Office and the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labor that we were able to effect the change so that we could meet employment and labor now again, and then go back to the other matters. So colleagues, that's where that matter is. So Stombi, I hope you have, members have received those documentations by now. So I just wanted to give that, but I will ventilate them further should the need arise later on this afternoon, this evening. So I just wanted to give that background to colleagues. Yeah, that's all I wished to convey, colleagues. So
thank you, Chair. Yes, indeed, we've received the correspondence and the legal opinion. We were multitasking in this meeting. We were going through so thank you so much, Chair. We've received that documentation.
Okay. Ms. Fan, colleagues, can we meet here at 1800 hours this evening to deal with the President's response and to consider the legal advice and guidance which has been given on the aspects of the State Security Agency. The House is at 1400 today. So I think we can bring the meeting to an end. Mazambane, because you and I in Mark's building, we are sharp past 12.
Oh,
Yeah,
all right, colleagues. On that note, the meeting stands adjourned. We will convene at 1800 hours this evening.
Chair, you defended me from the
Okay.
ambush.
Yes, I'm
Just okay, hold on.
mamela ndiyaqhuba.
Yebo ba.
Ndinimamele ndiyaqhuba. Xa nithanda ndiyaqhuba, xa nithandayo, xa ningathandiyo lithiwe lithi cwaka. Nitye loo nto nityisiweyo.
Ndikhona namhlanje, ndikhona.
Nitye loo nto nityisiweyo. Nitye loo nto nityisiweyo. Xa nityisiwe.
Ndiyahamba apha mna ndidilishana naye wonke umntu. Mna ndiyahamba bakwaSikopa. Anzange ndiyibone into udelelwa kangaka. Ndiyahamba apha.
Ndikubukela ubafingela uyakwazi ukukhwela etafileni.
Hey, ndiyaqonda uba hey la maXhosa la.
Awindawo mamDolashe uhlezi la.
Sendihlelele ukudelelwa ngawo wonke umuntu nje. Ofinyela kum ndintsika kakade wonke umuntu okhulayo sefinyela kum. Ngenye ilanga bazaliphola.
I know face to face is fanele.
Hayi asibafuna face to face.
Yeah. All right, colleagues, so later, have a good one.
Okay.